Right now, from KTAB News, your local election headquarters, this is Big Country Politics.
Thank you for being here for Big Country Politics. I'm Victor Sotelo. We start our broadcast this morning with our eye on Taylor County. Taylor County is continuing its work on next year's budget. Taylor County Commissioners thought they might be able to do that at last week's meeting, but County Judge Downing Bowles says that the new property tax rate will not be released till later. So then county leaders will have that information to work with in setting the budget for Taylor County Department and agencies. The judge encourages taxpayers to speak up on taxes and how they should be spent. And the same type of discussion for Abilene City Council. City Manager Robert Hanna says Abilene will be able to cover its needs for next year's budget, but won't have much room for flexibility, especially if there is another lockdown. That could mean more severe approach on spending.
We are static this year. We're recommending that we do not increase or decrease the tax rate.
And the council approved that recommendation, but there will still be a public hearing on the budget before that final vote. And now from your local election headquarters, several city elections were postponed back in May because of coronavirus concerns. Now the city council says those elections will happen in November, the same day as the presidential election. The Abilene citizens will be voting on the offices of mayor in two places on the city council November 3rd. The city secretary, Shawnee Atkinson, says because of the postponement, things are a little different, including a contract with Jones County.
Well, normally we don't include them just because it's a May election and we don't have to have countywide polling locations. But in November, we do have to have countywide polling locations, which means we have to contract with the counties. So since Abilene is in two counties, we have to have both Taylor and Jones County. So it's a little bit more of an added expense just because we have to pay them.
And City Manager Robert Hanna said all of the contracts for both Taylor and Jones counties have been obtained. The Abilene Parks and Recreation Department has seen a rise in the number of people using Abilene City Parks, and it's apparently because of COVID-19, with families and individuals wanting to break from staying inside. But one park in particular needs some fixing up. KTAB's Monica Meek reports on the city working with the Stevenson Park Committee.
Shantae Flemings is a member of the Stevenson Park Committee, which formed after a Juneteenth event when they realized that their park was run down.
Comparing that park to some of these other parks that are fixed up nice, we want that for Stevenson.
She wants these conditions to be addressed.
It's a lot of things that can be fixed, but it's been neglected.
The committee wants this to be a spot for community gatherings.
When we go to Stevenson, it's like a reunion. It's like we have somebody that is barbecuing, we have people out playing music. It's like a celebration.
And a place for kids.
We want our kids to feel safe the same way they feel at Nelson, at Sears. We want our kids to feel like they can come here and play.
We are seeing a huge increase in people going to our parks, enjoying the outdoor spaces.
Leslie Andrews from the Parks and Rec Services is working with the group to address their concerns.
We have had to put more resources towards picking up trash, cleaning restrooms, trying to keep the parks up and going for people.
The Stevenson Park Committee, alongside the Parks and Rec Services, is coming up with the final plan and budget for what this project will be.
It's got so much potential in that park, and it's beautiful. We could utilize that.
And they're starting with their biggest task first.
The bathroom right now is what's needing the biggest renovation.
In Abilene, with coverage you can count on, Monica Meek, KTAB News.
In Stevenson Park last had some work done in 2005 and a small project since, but nothing as big as what is being planned now. And the Small Business Development Centers in Abilene is seeing a steady rate of entrepreneurs wanting to open new businesses during the pandemic when most places might be forced to shut down. One unique place is opening up shop to bring a new flair to food in Abilene.
Owner of the new food truck Papi's Pinchos in Puerto Rican cuisine, Jason Tavares says opening a business during a pandemic was a big decision.
Opening a business during the middle of a pandemic is really toss up in the air.
Despite some businesses closing down due to COVID-19, some entrepreneurs are taking the leap to open new businesses.
They're ready to do something different and strike out on their own, and that's the spirit of entrepreneurship.
Regional Director of the Small Business Development Center, David Smith, says he was nervous about businesses at first.
Well, actually, we were very concerned that due to COVID, we'd have people, not think it was a good time to open a new business. But actually, our business has been very good in that area. We've had a lot of people come in and want to start businesses.
Butt says they found one food business to have an advantage above the rest.
The thing about a food truck is, it's automatically curbside. And so if you have a business that shuts down and they say, you can only do curbside, we got a food truck that's been doing curbside.
Being curbside and located outdoors was a big help for this food truck.
Having a mobile food truck drops down a lot of those restrictions and overheads and that the governor has put on restaurants and whatnot.
David Smith says there are other businesses doing well during this time too.
The real estate business is very good right now, and the construction business is very good also.
In Abilene, with coverage you can count on, Monica Meek, KTAB News.
It's a long time.
And the Small Business Development Center is working with people who want to start a business. The branch of Texas Tech helps come up with a business plans, budgets, and more so they can go pursue their goals. And with school just about to start, Jim Ned School District sharing with us last week how it's planning to keep schools safe this semester. KTAB's Mercedes Hernandez has more on the school sanitizing routine.
As the first day of school approaches, Jim Ned CISD Superintendent Glenn Teal says his district is gearing up to keep students safe.
Do deep cleaning of all of our facilities as well as our entire transportation fleet.
He says a deep cleaning company will sanitize the district at the beginning of the year, when cold and flu season usually starts, and again next spring, all in an effort to reduce coronavirus spread.
They do both a deep cleaning wipe down along with this fogger that sanitizes the entire room, all surfaces.
Teal says the district's leaders came to this decision after months of discussion. They hope they found the best solution to defending against COVID-19, even if an outbreak happens later in the year.
Any outbreaks that we have that are significant in the district, and this includes coronavirus, they would come back and deep clean those areas as well as needed.
With less than a month until the first day of school, Teal says he's excited to have students and staff back on campus, but they'll adjust their safety measures as needed.
So we're excited about that. It's just an additional layer of support to keep kids in school and keep our kids and staff healthy.
In Tuscola, with coverage you can count on, Mercedes Hernandez, KTAB News.
And school is set to start for Jim Ned on August 19th. Instruction will be offered in person and online. For more on the district's policies concerning mask visits, visit this article on bigcountryhomepage.com. Now continuing coverage on COVID-19 pandemic. For those living on the streets, navigating through this pandemic has been tough. The Salvation Army of Abilene says it's seen an increase in people coming to them for help. Our Dan Booth tells us how the Salvation Army has adjusted to the pandemic and the impact it continues to have on people who have nowhere else to turn.
I see the sadness, I see just the depression, I see the hunger, I see the homelessness, and I was in the same situation, and it's terrible.
According to Community Development and Public Relations Director Shelley Futrell, since the pandemic started, the Salvation Army has seen a 40% increase in people walk through their doors.
We have seen a serious upkick in the people that have come into our program just recently, because this is just one more thing added to an already heavy load that they're carrying.
In order to give back to people who are dealing with similar problems to what he went through, Joe Gonzalez is helping the Salvation Army combat the pandemic by helping them sanitize their facilities as much as possible.
The church, the gym, all the way to the lobby, the living quarters, all the offices. And I just, basically everything that gets touched.
During the pandemic, people all around the country have had difficulties paying rent, and in Abilene, it's no different.
When the end of July hits and landlords are able to evict, I think we'll see an upkick, certainly in our shelter. I do believe there's going to be a whole lot of people without homes. without a place to stay, and so we are here.
For years, the Salvation Army has helped people overcome drug and alcohol addiction, provided a place to sleep for the homeless, and given food, clothes, and much more to those who need it.
You know, I really didn't care for anything, but when I came here, they helped me actually open my mind up and my heart.
For BigCountryHomepage.com, I'm Dan Booth.
And to find out how you can support the Salvation Army of Abilene, you can go to our website at BigCountryHomepage.com. All right, still to come on Big Country Politics, the eastern portion of the Big Country has a new state representative. An in-depth conversation with Dr. Glenn Rogers. We're back in 2 minutes.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
And now from your local election headquarters, one Palo Pinto County resident is trading in the saddle for a seat in the House of Representatives. Glenn Rogers, elected to represent District 60, which covers parts of the Big Country, including Brown, Callahan, Coleman, Eastland, Shackelford, and Stevens counties. Rogers is a big advocate for rural America, but as our Jessica Rank found out, that principle isn't something he just picked up, but one that was instilled in him at a young age, just about an hour and a half down the road.
The day starts bright and early. A normal routine for Glenn Rogers
My family's been on this ranch since 1906.
and the 5 generations before him.
I spent a lot of time out here growing up.
Rogers following in his family's footsteps,
Now you can make jelly and wine out of those.
taking care of this piece of land located just about an hour and a half from the key city.
We're in the Post Oak Bend of the Brazos River, and it's just one of the most beautiful parts of the Brazos.
And while today you can find him in his boots and cowboy hat, it wasn't long ago that he was wearing a coat and a stethoscope.
I like to say I had to work off the ranch 35 years to afford to be able to ranch full time.
Rogers starting out his career as a vet.
In 1980, when I graduated from veterinary school, I came to Young County first, and I had a practice there and began ranching here in 1980. And then in 1986, I moved my veterinary practice to here in Palo Pinto County.
And while he doesn't practice anymore, it's the skills he learned from both jobs
I was president of the American Association of Bovine Practitioners.
that's pushed him from the saddle to a seat in the House.
I got really passionate about trying to do something about that. I really want to see what I can do to help rural Texas remain strong and continue to grow and attract talent, not lose talent.
And even with a new position,
Rural America is the backbone of this country. It's the backbone of Texas.
he's sticking to his roots. In Palo Pinto County, with coverage you can count on, Jessica Rank, KTAB News.
And even though this Texas veterinarian may be leaving the farm behind soon, he's not leaving his roots behind. We're now diving deeper into Glenn Rogers' plan for the Texas state capitol.
You can take the man out of the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the man.
A lot of people ask me if I've lost my mind to do this.
Glenn Rogers soon to be sitting in the State House of Representatives.
I had no other agenda other than I wanted to represent rural Texas.
Not really a surprise considering this
A little bit farther than you can see is where we were.
is where he calls home. Rogers saying the dream to go from the saddle to the seat came from conversations with other veterinarians.
I was president of the American Association of Bovine Practitioners, which is a group of cow doctors in the U.S. and Canada.
Soon realizing there was a stampede of rural issues.
It's much deeper than just getting more veterinarians out there. We have to have rural communities that can attract and retain not only veterinarians but other professional talent. We've had somewhat of a talent drain in rural Texas and rural America.
And as Rogers says, the solution is centered around 3 major points.
We have to have good schools, we have to have hospitals, and we have to have businesses that are growing and thriving.
And while he won't take his seat until November,
I want to be the most accessible state representative that people in this district have ever had.
the message once he gets to Austin is clear.
Rural America is the backbone of this country. It's the backbone of Texas.
In Palo Pinto County, with coverage you can count on, Jessica Rank, KTAB News.
Now, Rogers is running unopposed and will officially take his spot in the state House of Representatives after the November election.
From your local election headquarters, this is Big Country Politics on KTAB.
And welcome back to Big Country Politics. I'm sitting here with Dr. Glenn Rogers, who's newly elected state representative. First of all, congratulations.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that.
And we have to mention this view. We are sitting on your ranch right now. Tell us a little bit about the family history.
Yeah, my great-great-grandfather purchased this ranch in 1906. We're in the Post Oak Bend of the Brazos River. and it's just one of the most beautiful parts of the Brazos, and we're glad to be here on this part of the Brazos.
Now tell me a little bit about the runoff, because it was a little bit delayed and we're kind of going into July. How was the campaign trail for you?
It was long. We started out in September, we announced, and there were 4 of us in the race, and then the incumbent Mike Lane got out at the last minute, and we had another candidate that got in the race. And so there were 4 of us, and in the March 3rd primary, we wound up with a runoff between myself and John Francis from Cisco. And then the runoff was scheduled for May 26th, and then that was delayed due to COVID to July 14th. So last Tuesday we finally got through, and I was successful in that runoff election. We won by about 678 votes.
Now you've had a lot of careers, rancher and veterinarian. What made you want to get into the political scene?
Well, I was serving as president of this national cattle veterinary group called the AABP, the American Association of Bovine Practitioners, and it was through that experience and making several trips to Washington, D.C. that I got really interested in the rural veterinarian shortage and just what was going on with rural America. And I became very impassioned about trying to help rural Texas do a better job of attracting and retaining talent, such as veterinarians and teachers and doctors and that kind of thing. And so I have no agenda for running other than I want to represent rural Texas. I believe there's so much potential in this district to grow, and these rural communities are either growing or they're dying, and there's a lot there's so much potential here, and I've met some of the best people in the world throughout this campaign, and I just want to represent these people in rural Texas. There's only 19 legislators west of the I-35 corridor.
And tell me a little of a couple things that you were running on, because I know education was a pretty big one for you.
Yeah, education, public education is the backbone of our rural communities. We have to have access to rural health care, and we have to be able to create jobs through economic development. So those are the 3 pillars of our campaign, and with COVID-19, they're even more important.
And that kind of leads into my next question. I mean, you are entering kind of the political scene during this whole pandemic. How do you plan on handling that once you get to Austin?
Well, when we get to Austin, there's going to be 2 main things we're working on. Number 1 is redistricting, and that depends on the census, and the census is likely going to be delayed because of COVID. So we're hoping to have the census results in time to be able to do redistricting. More than likely we'll have a special session to deal with redistricting. That's so important to rural Texas. We need everyone to fill out their census. Any of you listening, if you haven't done that, please do that. You can do it online, you can do it through the mail, or you can even do it by phone call. But we need everyone to complete a census so we can capture all the more citizens that we capture, the less likely that we'll lose an additional state representative representing rural Texas.
And I know you have been on the campaign trail to a lot of different counties in West Texas. For those of us that weren't able to meet you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a rancher and I'm a veterinarian. I've spent my career, I think, preparing me for this. As a practitioner, I learned how to work for the public 24/7. Certainly I was accustomed to hard work as a large animal veterinarian. As a university educator, I learned to teach, I learned to do research. I think those will be important as I go to Austin. And then as an animal health consultant, I learned how to take the needs of rural Texas to a boardroom in New York City, for instance. And that'll be helpful to me as I go to Austin and I talk about what the needs are in rural Texas. And rural legislators have to stand together because we're such a minority now in this state that's mostly urban. So I think if you look at all 3 of my careers, and then ranching has been throughout that time for 40 years, and the one word I would use to describe my experience in ranching is resilience. And I've learned how to be resilient, how to work through economic hardship, disease, drought, fires, all those things. And we're certainly going to have a session in Austin where we need to be resilient. It's going to be a very challenging session.
And what are some of the first things really quickly that you want to kind of get started on?
The first thing is the budget. We're bound by the Texas Constitution to balance the budget every 2 years. And the governor has already asked for a 5% cut across all agencies, and I support that. I want to make sure that I can help support public education. We may not gain anything in this session realistically, but we want to maintain what was gained in the last session of public education. And so I want to really be an advocate for that. and I want to make sure that we don't give up anything that's going to hurt, particularly the rural communities, such as our hospitals. But it's going to be a tough session, and I know we're going to have to make across-the-board cuts, but we have to protect those things that are vital to keeping a thriving rural Texas.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for letting us come and enjoy this beautiful view.
It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll be right back with Big Country Politics.
From your local election headquarters, this is Big Country Politics on KTAB.
Well, roughly 33,000 kids throughout the Key City are food insecure, and since March 17th, school has been out and the Abilene Independent School District has been supporting families needing an extra meal. Our Kevin Clack was at a meal site last week.
It's lunchtime over at Martinez Elementary.
We have a chicken sandwich, apples, refried beans, and milk.
But school isn't in session, and it hasn't been for the last 5 months. But that hasn't stopped the Abilene Independent School District from adding additional reassurance to those families needing extra meal support.
It came out to about 2,200 a day at 13 locations combined.
Jay Tao, AISD Director of Student Nutrition, says before COVID, they normally fed about 1,000 people a day, but they had to stay on campus. Since COVID hit, he says there's been an increase of amounts fed. Now they can take it to go.
So that meant that students did not have to come in, receive a meal, sit down, and consume that meal on site. They can now take that meal with them away and off of the site property.
Helping serve the last 17 years, Becky Stute says it's been a Herculean effort by the school district, but those meals from AISD are coming to an end.
You know, they come in and they get the food, and they're grateful, and they're sad that we're not going to be here after Thursday, but they also know that there's other resources out there for them.
One of those is the Abilene Hunger Coalition, who will be covering that load from July 27th to the start of school with 50 meals a day at 11 different sites.
And then we'll either increase or decrease as the week goes on.
$3,000 to sponsor a location. Becky says they'll take all the support they can get. In Abilene with coverage you can count on, Kevin Clack, KTAB News.
And to sponsor or help serve at one of the sites and sign up for a shift, you can click on the link on this story on bigcountryhomepage.com. All right, that does it for this week's edition of Big Country Politics. For the latest political headlines, always go to bigcountryhomepage.com. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Thanks for watching.